We are Rogue Media Sports.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
And it is time for another episode of the Doomsday Podcast. And never so fitting, Ed Werder joins me live in studio out at Frito Nation Productions, our producer, Mark Frito Friedman, with us as always. And Ed, I was reading about, on Saturday, I believe it was, our friend Barry Horn was writing something along the lines of how NBC would love to be able to have the flex into the Cowboys-Eagles game that last Sunday of the season. And then we watch that. 37-9. Embarrassing. And I know, Ed, this was historically, this was one that ranks right up there with one of the worst losses we've seen out there at this new stadium.
Well, I think the most significant thing about this, and NBC Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth probably wish they could have switched to another game at some point in the third quarter when the Eagles began to run away with it with 4 consecutive touchdowns. This team just can't overcome adversity like other teams. Like, the Eagles have had plenty of injuries at the very same positions that the Cowboys have endured injuries and been unable to succeed. Look at the Minnesota Vikings. They're playing a third-string quarterback, and they lost their number 1 draft pick running back, and yet they're winning their division and challenging for the number 1 spot in the NFC playoff field. We saw Dak Prescott the last 2 weeks go from a quarterback who was, in my opinion, playing like one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL to a guy who has now had back-to-back the worst games of his career. And to me, I don't know if the Cowboys are going to be able to overcome this. I think they're already out in the NFC East. The question is, can they go from the 10th spot and out of the playoffs where they are now and move up 4 spots somehow in the next 6 weeks, many of those weeks without Sean Lee and Ezekiel Elliott? Yeah, I have my doubts.
I don't know, and I would nominate, I think Tyron Smith now has to be in the MVP conversation. My goodness. Apparently the entire thing breaks down when he's not out there, and you're right, it seems to all tied to Dak Prescott. And could this so-called elite wide receiver, could he elevate his game in these times? And I think we know the answer to that. Ed, we got a lot planned. I was able to get in there and have a good visit with Jerry Jones late last night.
You stayed for the whole game?
After his stirring commentary. And by the way, I don't always stay for the whole game simply because I'm always getting ready for these podcasts. But last night, I was able to stay the entire time. And because of that, we have some exclusive audio with Jerry Jones that folks will hear as he continues his battle with the league. I think he's starting to get out the olive branch.
Well, I think it's excellent that you bring up Jerry Jones because I have a few things to say about the man in the gold jacket with the shiny ring myself.
Play the music, Frito. And it is time for that Doomsday Podcast. And, boy, tough day around here, Ed, as we get ready for Thanksgiving. So much for us to be thankful for this time of year, but the Cowboys, where they just get hammered after hanging in there in the first half, sort of having to rely on the foot of Mike Nugent, and it just disappeared and vanished in the second half. But, Ed, I know you had to be excited to see the owner, general manager for this organization out there at halftime being honored. Who is that big, huge man? David Baker.
David Baker.
He's the head of the...
He's always wearing a pastel-colored jacket.
Oh, I tell you, he's a large man, and he was congratulating Jerry. And then what we got was a very defiant Jerry in his speech. Ed, I think we could both say, boy, Jerry, who's been under fire for a lot of reasons, some which don't really seem to have to do with football. Maybe you're going to take him to task for some of his football decisions, perhaps?
Well, I think there's been plenty of criticism of Jason Garrett and the coaching staff, and some of that is hard-earned and richly deserved, and there's been criticism of the players, and they're used to that. What hasn't been examined is the role of the Cowboys front office, and in particular the gold-jacketed, shiny ring general manager Jerry Jones in all of this. I mean, halfway through what would become the worst loss ever at JerryWorld, namesake Jerry Jones, at the ceremony honoring him, said, quote, "What I've tried to do with every breath is to make the Dallas Cowboys better and to make the NFL better." Well, the running back that he took 4th overall last year is vacationing in Cabo at the moment when the Cowboys need him most, because that's the best place for him to go to rebuild his reputation, to make sure that he applies himself to fitness and comes back in the very best shape possible should the Cowboys accomplish the unthinkable and actually have meaningful games to play the final 2 weeks of the regular season based on what we've seen. Because this is what we've seen. Without Elliott, the Cowboys have scored 1 touchdown in 22 possessions. Without Elliott and left tackle Tyron Smith, Dak Prescott has produced 1 touchdown. 1. And none in the last 20 offensive series. He's had 6 turnovers, been sacked 12 times in 2 games. The Cowboys have been outscored 64-16 in their last 2 games. And the whole season has been about the Cowboys owner and general manager and the unique distraction he always is, has been, and will forever be. For the Cowboys, this has been a season about Jones getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. Jones defending Elliott and trying to make his suspension go away. Jones publicly challenging Commissioner Roger Goodell. And that's why I would argue the Cowboys lost this game, the division title, and probably the playoffs in the front office as much as they did on the field at JerryWorld in an embarrassing performance. While Jerry's doing his Jerry things, the Eagles were busy doing the only thing that every other football front office does. They were focused on building a team, one that has talent and depth and can withstand the kind of injuries that have unraveled the Cowboys. And I'm almost done, so hang on. You'll get to react here in a moment.
No, it's good.
While Prescott endures the worst football nightmares without Elliott and Tyron Smith, the Eagles remade their offense around their second-year quarterback, Carson Wentz. They signed in free agency wide receivers Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith, both of whom had touchdowns against Dallas. They signed LeGarrette Blount, a hammer of a running back who had 57 of the Eagles' 215 rushing yards. They traded at the deadline for running back Jay Ajayi, who ran for 91 yards, including a 71-yarder that led to a back-breaking TD. The Eagles wanted to make Wentz better, and they succeeded by acquiring tough, physical players the Cowboys could not defend themselves against. The Eagles acquired 2 running backs. In contrast, here's what Jerry's team did, knowing for a year they could lose their best player in Elliott. Nothing. They kept Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden, who, oddly, was inactive last night. The Cowboys will blame it on injuries, even though attrition is part of the game. And it's true. They've arguably lost their best offensive, defensive, and special teams players. But let's put those side by side and compare it with the situation the Eagles are handling. Both the Eagles and Cowboys played without their starting left tackle, their best playmaking linebacker, and their kicker. In fact, the Eagles have lost 2 kickers. The Cowboys won the first half 9-7. They lost the second 30-0. All hail Jerry Jones.
Oh, whoa, Ed, my gosh, that was, sometimes Hanson gets credit for these unplugged sessions.
Am I going to get on Ellen?
I'd like to see you on Ellen. You're going to have to get
my bigger question is, am I going to get in the stadium on Thursday when I cover the game for Westwood One?
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a good point. I'm still deciding. After watching it second half, I had second thoughts about spending my Thanksgiving out there. I really was. I was like, do I really want to come out here and be a part of this? And if it, with you maybe being there, Ed, that might bring me out there because we are like family. But, no, that's good stuff. And I think you hit on some things there. First of all, for an organization that has a unique tie in a notorious tie, an infamous tie to Cabo, of all places. Of all places.
Remind me?
He could have gone anywhere, but he has to go to Cabo? Oh, my gosh.
Remind me what happened there once, not so long ago?
I know.
With one of the Cowboys' best ever teams?
Yeah, that was...
I want you to say it. I don't want to be the one to say
That's
this.
a 2017. That was a 2017. We know a certain quarterback does listen to this podcast, and he did, and I think he would admit that didn't look good, the optics to that. Of course,
nor do the optics to this look particularly
No,
good.
it doesn't look great at all. It doesn't look great at all. But at least Tony and them came back and played. This guy's been banished, and he's just going to hang out in Cabo for a few weeks, and you'll like this, Ed. I didn't put this in. You'll hear my visit with Jerry Jones coming up in a little bit. Him talking about his continuing fight with the NFL. As only Jerry could, by the way, Ed. He said, "No, I can't talk about that. Can't talk about that." And then I went to see Dak, and I came out and I said, "Well, Jerry's got about 3 or 4 reporters around him. I'll go over and see what's going on." And of course, he was talking about that. Exactly. Oh, and during the whole scrum that was around, about 3 or 4 reporters elbowed me because somebody asked about the Cabo thing, and so I start to say, this is, let's say about 40, 50 people are around, and I say something along the lines of, "Seems like your organization has a thing for Cabo," and somebody talked over the line, and then
that's probably
Clarence
good for you.
And a few people kind of like hit me like, "I can't believe you did that."
Don't go there.
Yeah. Although I think knowing Jerry, I think he would have honestly appreciated it at that time.
Well, I've looked at a lot of pamphlets for Cabo. Actually, I was there once for a wedding, and unfortunately the marriage didn't turn out. But it wasn't mine.
It wasn't
my marriage.
I'd like to hear that story.
But none of the brochures say anything about the perfect place for professional athletes to go to get their lives in order and reach the pinnacle of physical fitness for when you come back to your employer and your teammates in late December.
No, and if the thought was get away where nobody can find you, like people travel to Cabo. I mean, it's not like there won't
2-hour
be
flight from Dallas.
Some Cowboys fans tooling around Cabo. I'm probably, now that I know, gonna go over there to try to land an interview.
It's a business trip.
See what he's doing. I'll write this off. God,
good. I need something to negotiate with the
somebody's
IRS
here
at the moment.
to pay for it.
I need some leverage with the IRS.
Oh, my goodness. All right, Ed, as we continue to march through this, I thought you made some really good points, and I would say the Eagles, and it's funny, they have they turned their personnel over to Chip Kelly at one point, and then there was a big power struggle, and my man Howie got back in control.
Howie
Roseman, and a good friend of mine, and Ed, Howie would have jumped on with us, but I've learned something over the years. One thing I used to do that drove Frito nuts on the radio, after the Cowboys had a big loss, on like the Monday after, and people would say, "Why does Mosley do that?" I would have Selleck or I would have Tuck or one of my guys come on, and Cowboys fans didn't really appreciate that. So I think today, hearing from the Eagles GM, I don't think that's what Cowboys fans want to hear. But what you said is true. I mean, they addressed some major needs. And you know what happened? In bringing in better receivers, and they still had some drops, by the way. Torrey Smith had a big drop in the first half, one of the guys they brought in. But the young wide receiver, who was a rookie last year, Nelson Aguilar, he's elevated his game. Just because they've sort of brought in these veterans. Alshon Jeffrey is a nice player. I mean, a big, tall wide receiver wearing 17. Who does that remind you of in Eagles lore?
Harold Carmichael.
It made me think of Carmichael. He's not quite as tall as Harold, but boy, he reached out there. I mean, that's the thing about Dez, is Did you see that play he made? That Alshon Jeffrey made along the goal line. My goodness, to reach out there and haul that thing in.
It was a touchdown after review, but yeah, it was a great play.
Whatever, it was a beautiful play. They were going to get in anyway. So and so many facets of this thing, Ed, to get into. And we can double back to Dak and the offense. Let me just say this. Oh, by the way, Byron Bell, I mean, they helped him some. I mean, he held up better than certainly better than Chaz Green.
Well, how could you not? The standard was pretty low.
Standard was incredibly low.
But that kind of goes to my point. Now I said last week, and this is true, the Cowboys had every reason to believe that Chaz Green, could handle the swing tackle role. That if he had to start for Tyron Smith, he wouldn't destroy their chances to win because they'd won 3 straight games with him, including 2 at left tackle last season. So that was fair. But last night, they're choosing at left tackle instead of one of the great players ever to play that position, in Tyron Smith. He's not available. They're choosing between a guy in Chaz Green who gave up 5 sacks in 3.5 quarters or the guy who gave up 2 sacks in half a quarter. Like, those are not good choices that the Cowboys are being forced to make because of the roster.
I will say, no.
What has happened to Dez? I mean, he's not even a top 20 receiver in the NFL right now, and he's being paid as one of the top 5 guys in football. And his skill set just doesn't seem compatible with the quarterback right now.
No.
I think Dak is a guy who doesn't risk the football generally. He certainly did last night, his first 3-interception game of his career, 4 turnovers overall. But
although one of those was a Terrence Williams drop.
Right, off his hands again, a deflected interception at a pivotal point in the game, just like against Green Bay. Not quite as late or obvious, but still the same consequence for the Cowboys because he's a body catcher. But, Dez is a guy who, through all of the injuries that he's had and the surgeries that he couldn't prevent, has obviously not regained the explosiveness that made him a unique player early in his career. He doesn't create a lot of separation, and he's playing with a quarterback who's very conservative in his decision-making generally, and so he's not going to force the ball in to Dez and let him make a play like Tony Romo does. In a situation like that, where like we saw last night and where they are as a team right now, the people don't understand because they've never been in the locker room. You don't understand the charisma, the energy that Ezekiel Elliott brings to the football team. He is a unique character in that locker room, in addition to being one of the 10 best players in the NFL, in my opinion. But they need somebody to create an identity and give them some attitude and a sense of physicality. And Dez could do that if they could figure out a way to get him involved early enough in the games.
Oh, you didn't like those 2-yard out patterns they were throwing to him? I mean, that's trying to get him involved. I mean, my gosh, you're right. You'd like to get him in a situation where he could run after catch. Eagles did a pretty good job on him. That one pass down the sideline, I know he was about to get blown up, but he drops that one. He had a couple of drops in that game last night. It's hard for Dak, I think, to go to a guy over and over again if literally half the targets, I don't even know if it's half, are not completed. I mean, think about some of the great wide receivers in this game. I think about Julio. I think about Antonio, for the Falcons and the Steelers. The guys that when you go their way, they're pretty much going to catch it. Their catch radius, we love talking about catch radiuses.
Alshon Jeffrey showed you what that is.
Oh, my gosh. Get anything close to him, he's going to bring it in, and it seems like things have to sort of be perfect for Dez these days. And then the other wide receiver, is going to get in Twitter battles with Howard Eskin after games.
And
come on, Howard, stop going out. I mean, Howard is Howard.
He's antagonizing these guys.
Yes.
But, Dez, let's look at his season. 93 targets, 46 catches, 504 yards. He's got the 6th most targets in all of football. For those who say Dak won't throw it to him or doesn't do it often enough, which I just explained, he's 6th in targets, so 6th in opportunities, 21st in catches, 37th in yards. So while I think it's ridiculous to be spending too much time focusing blame on Dez, and I would actually argue they've got to find a way to get him involved earlier in the game than they did, and on different routes. I like him across the middle. It's an easy throw. It gives him a chance to break a tackle. It allows him to get excited and sort of reverberate that enthusiasm throughout the rest of the huddle. And they need that right now because they're not getting – I mean, the quarterback, I like Dak Prescott a lot. He's a young, evolving player. I don't know if he's ever going to be a dominant passer, but he's certainly capable of being a winning quarterback in the right circumstances. He proved that last year. But he also doesn't bring, a lot of personality. He's a take command guy, but he's not an exuberant kind of guy. I think he instills confidence when he's playing well, but he doesn't really give you a sense of invincibility, and he doesn't resonate excitement that has the right effect on other people. He does it in a different way than that, as is common among quarterbacks. But they really miss Zeke Elliott. Everybody, so many people are saying, it's Tyron Smith. No, it's Zeke Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott is one of the top 10 players in football. He led the NFL in rushing as a rookie. There were plenty of people who played the Cowboys last year who thought and expressed this to me, yeah, Dak's a good player. The guy who makes that offense great is Ezekiel Elliott. And the guy who makes the Cowboys great is in Mexico on a 6-week vacation. And Jerry Jones invested the 4th pick in the draft on this player.
Can you imagine all the charisma, though, that he's brought to Cabo? I mean, don't you think that's a happier place?
Cabo Wabo?
That he's there. Do we know? I need to find out which resort, where he's staying, because I am going to go see him. Now, Ed, that brings up another point. We're sitting here, and Cowboys now are 5-5. And sitting there, and boy, Jason Garrett gave him did you see it? He said, you can be 5-11, or we can be 11-5. And I think he went through all the scenarios. I think to most players, 8-8 seemed most likely. But I
didn't think it was one or the other.
No,
win all the rest or lose all the rest.
Yeah. And this coach is uniquely qualified to go 8-8. But I think if they could have survived that first 6 games without him and maybe gone 3-3, then you got 10 whole games. You have the bulk of your schedule left. And they rolled the dice. And here's why they rolled the dice. When it really comes down to it, is Jerry thought he was right. Zeke, apparently wanted to clear his name and all that kind of stuff. But also,
which is no small thing. If he didn't do anything, then he should have done what he said he was going to do. And I guess you could argue he didn't fulfill that. And he should have fought it to the very end. Now, he didn't quite go that far, but I think he fought it as long as he thought he reasonably had a chance to win.
Yeah, well, I guess we wouldn't have found out how horribly Goodell and the gang botched that investigation had we not played this out to some extent. But for the team-wise, it would have been better, and they could have said this is no admission of guilt. This is literally us getting this out of the way because we don't know what's going to happen with this. Now, their thought probably was Brady got to play a whole season while fighting his, and then didn't have to serve it. And the Cowboys thought they might have a Super Bowl team this year. Let's play this out and see where it all goes. And once they got into New York, they were good in Judge Mazant's court. And then they got to New York, and things got away from them. And this defense, talking about the Cowboys' defense without Sean Lee, and this goes to your to your rant / eloquent, unplugged analysis. I think, it was good. It was all good. I think that it's bad when on either side of the ball when you take out one player and everything sort of falls apart, and especially when that one player has a known history of not making it through a season, and that's unfortunately a description of Sean Lee. He's a great player. Yeah.
But again,
he averages on probably about 4 or 5 games missed a season if we played it out.
Has he ever? I don't know if he's ever played a 16-game season. In fact, I don't believe he has. And yet, and they're like 0-6 or 0-7 in their last stretch of games without him. And you saw it last night right away. The Eagles, everything they do on the first drive works. Right? They couldn't stop the running backs, no matter who it was, inside, outside. Handing it off to them, throwing it to them, they were just taken apart in the very first series. Now, they did come back and play decently for a while.
You're right. They got a foothold.
But overall, the defense did nothing. And I predicted doom for the Cowboys if they lost Ezekiel Elliott. They're 0-2 without him. Not really a surprise. I did say that maybe the quarterback was playing at a high enough level, and mostly I said, the defense gives me a little source of encouragement if I'm the Cowboys. David Irving and DeMarcus Lawrence have been dominating last night. No turnovers, no sacks, and they allowed 215 yards rushing. Most of that in the second half.
Yeah. No, the dam broke, and they did after giving up that quick touchdown drive. I say quick. They moved it right down the field. No, in the first half. The first half, the defense hung in there.
They started the game the same way they started the second half.
Now they lost Hitchens in that game. I mean, without Hitchens and Lee, they are doomed because you're right. There's nothing they can do against the run. And our guy, poor Jalen Smith, that's a struggle. I mean, I got to ISO on him a few times last night, and I watched it several times, and he can't get off a block. I mean, he's coming up there, and they were just
He
destroying.
did make a pretty good tackle on the tight end.
Out there by the deal. Yeah.
And he stripped the ball on the 2-point play, which was another good play.
Give him a good strip, but I'm just saying against the run, he's getting engulfed. By the Cowboys'
admission, right, he's better the less he plays. Well, that shouldn't be the case for a guy who's taken in the second round and is supposed to be a great player, right? That shouldn't be the case. The less he plays, the better he is.
Yeah.
The more you get out of him. Should be the more he plays, the better influence he has on the game. So, and I don't blame him. He just isn't ready for this yet. I mean, and maybe he'll never be ready.
And yeah, you're right. And maybe not physically ready. And we don't know. I mean, at some point, we can't keep saying, well, maybe the nerve will regenerate more or something. I will say, good athleticism shown by the safety. Byron Jones racing down a back after, 71-yard run. Yeah, showed some good hustle there. It didn't really have an angle. I thought he just went and got him. And
he didn't go all Zeke on that play and just stand there and watch the guy score like Zeke did in Denver on that interception return that he was so harshly criticized for.
Oh, man. And that's what somebody said. Mike Missinelli, our guy in one of the radio guys that we know in Philly, was saying something like, well, the Cowboys defense, how embarrassing. The Eagles don't have a kicker, and yet they can't force a field goal. Well, that's not – it's not like you just, as a defense, are just like, okay – we can call.
Now they don't have a kicker. We can deal with their offense.
We know how to keep them out of the end zone now because we have to make them kick a field goal. They can't kick a field goal. Well, in some sense, that makes an offense more daring. I mean, even going for two every time. Did they have any problem at all? I mean, if I'm Philly and I'm playing that next game, even if they have a competent kicker, I'm like, let's go for two. I mean, the Cowboys literally they would line up a 2-point play, and they put that bunch set out there to the right, and the Cowboys had no clue. Ed, any more points you want to make before I get to this exclusive audio that we gathered last night in the bowels of AT&T Stadium? I don't want to – you've got some notes over there. I'm going to take your monologue because I want to get that to some newspapers, okay? I'm going to get that out there. So
that'll be good for me.
Anything else you want to hit on before I get to this?
Do we want to talk about how badly the Cowboys' second-year quarterback was outplayed by – the quarterback drafted second overall versus the quarterback drafted 135th. And, I think I mentioned last week, and it got a lot of attention over the weekend. I did this poll of 8 general managers, and all of them preferred Carson Wentz over Dak Prescott. Except for one. One said he would, just to keep it from being unanimous, would vote for Dak. But, boy, no contest in this game last night. 2 touchdowns for Carson Wentz, none for Dak. No interception for Carson Wentz, 3 for Dak. Wentz, no sacks. Dak, 4 sacks. So the second pick in the draft badly outplayed the 135th pick in the draft. And then Jerry, after the game, I know we're going to get to some comments he made about his issues with Roger Goodell and the rest of the owners, but of the quarterbacks, Jerry said, we've always known what the East is. We've designed the game so it needs great quarterbacks. It's really good to see these quarterbacks. Wentz made a couple of plays out there that were just unbelievably good plays talent-wise. He's going to be outstanding. Ours is too. So,
yeah, and I think Jerry made it a point. In one of the 3 media sessions I was a part of with Jerry, as you know, there are waves of reporters who come Ed, and even when Jerry says, no, I'm not going to talk about something, he generally ends up talking about it. He did make it a point to say several times, I go to bed each night, put my elbows on the table or on the bed, and give thanks for Dak Prescott. I think one thing Jerry didn't want to do is be so in awe of Carson Wentz, even though he was. I think he was thoroughly impressed, but he wanted to reiterate that he liked his guy too. And the Cowboys got in a bad situation in the second half, weren't able to move the ball. But I think everything you've said, Ed, this offense is so less explosive without Zeke, and it's too bad. I mean, you know what the Eagles did? They don't have anybody close to Zeke, really. But
nobody has anybody. But again, he's the best running back in football.
What I like about what they did with Ajayi is
Le'Veon Bell is comparable.
Is they actually had a group of backs that were doing fine. I mean, the offense was humming, and they were winning all these games, and they still went out and made a deal and added to their stable running back. I mean, that could have made Blunt or Barner or any of those guys go, well, what are we doing that you needed to go get this guy? And their thought is, hey, if we have a chance to add, somebody,
we're making a run. And we got the best record in the NFC. Let's go get a starting caliber player for a fourth-round pick. Why weren't the Cowboys in that conversation? They're about to lose their running back for 6 games. Now I know because there was some speculation that maybe they would try to reacquire DeMarco Murray because he knows the offense.
Yeah,
they have Derrick Henry in Tennessee. I know DeMarco himself wondered if something might happen. He had been hearing rumors to that effect. Proved to be unsubstantiated. Nothing happened. But and I understand because if you're the Cowboys, you solve a problem for 6 games, but then you create a problem for the rest of the season because now you've got a guy who presumably has performed well as your replacement for Zeke, and now he doesn't necessarily deserve to go sit on the bench when Zeke comes back. But the Eagles made the bold move, right? And the Cowboys did nothing. And I often wondered if the Eagles went out and got him to keep the Cowboys from getting him because they figured it was going to be neck-and-neck competition to the wire.
Yeah.
But like I said, the Eagles, to their credit, they made that move. Howie Roseman, the general manager, they have 3 great personnel guys in Joe Douglas, Andy Weidel, and Tom Donahoe, former general manager. And those guys not only made that move, but look at what they did last year to get Carson Wentz. They were picking like 14th or something.
That was very aggressive.
To get their guy. They made a series of trades to get the draft collateral that allowed them to go get Carson Wentz. And I think Carson Wentz,
a guy who didn't play D1 football. That's a lot. That's a lot to give up for. Where they're still as great as he was in college, there was still the unknown of not having played great competition.
The Cowboys evaluated him highly and had, certainly they would have taken him had he fallen to the 4th round like Dak did, but obviously that was never going to happen. And they made their choice. And I think choosing Zeke Elliott made a lot of sense for the football player he is. But if you're going to build your entire team around any one player, you got to make sure that guy is flawless and is not going to put you in the situation that Zeke Elliott has put the Dallas Cowboys.
No, I think that's right, and that leads me to one thing, Ed. Late last night, after Dak spoke, I had already had a couple of conversations with Jerry. I ducked back out. I left him for a little while, and he was still talking, and my ears perked up. Ed, the reporter, the longtime reporter that I am, when I heard a mention of Roger. And so I think now it's appropriate, Ed, to hear from Jerry, and you'll hear me asking him to repeat something he said about Roger Goodell.
It sounds like you were saying something when I walked up nice about Goodell. Do you think some things he's...
I said that Roger has increased the transparency of the league since he's been the commissioner, which is a good thing. I said the ownership is the most qualified ownership that I've ever been with since I've been in the league in almost 30 years. This is very qualified ownership. Qualified in that they, around the league, they've put more capital in it than any group that's ever been here. They have committed not only to, in many cases, buying teams, but they have built great facilities. And so they're really qualified. And this is a time, because we do have issues, but every entity that there's ever been has almost all the time a time to evaluate, reassess, freshen up, and do it better. I've never been with one that didn't. In this particular case, our ownership is so qualified that as we are entertaining, extending, or as we are, if let's just say we aren't, but we were getting in someone new, that's when you assess, sit down, and say to them, this is how we would like these issues to be done. I'm one vote. I'm only one vote. And so, we need to have that opportunity. And we can. We've got plenty of time. We have a lot of issues. You guys are aware of all of them. But I will tell you, the way the assessment of them on my part are simple opportunities to really do some great things for the future of the NFL. And all of these challenges we've got, we can have some real opportunity. I can't tell you how positive I am about our future, but I know that nothing ever comes without some real good delving in and looking at how we can do some things better.
When you imagine that, do you imagine Roger continuing on? When you imagine, all the, like you say, the positive things can happen, do you see him as the guy that should lead you guys?
I've never addressed that in a negative way. The thing that, to sum it all up, what I want is just I want accountability, more accountability. I want real, really unprecedented accountability to the ownership.
Do you want him to remain?
That's simple.
You want him
That's
to remain
simple.
commissioner?
And again, that isn't even an issue. That's not even an issue. That's not even an issue. It's unfortunate that motives are it's being pressed that it's all about Zeke. Okay, it's all about that, which questions your motive. But anybody, Zeke's done. Zeke's over. But some of the things that make that happen are still around.
Jerry, does Roger have a plan, in your opinion?
Again, I'm going to shut it down right here. But we, as owners, should make that plan. And we should have the opportunity to do it. Our commissioner is probably the most powerful relative to his constituency. He's the most powerful person relative to the constituency in America. Relative to his constituency, he's been given that kind of power. And so what you want to do, if you want to make some positive changes, you want that power to be accountable, in my case, to the owners.
And that was Jerry Jones late last night after that ball game, and Jerry had some time to reflect. And Ed, as we get ready to wrap this up, I would say, and you had a lot to say earlier about Jerry. I do think that was a message to everybody that at halftime he sort of was a defiant Jerry Jones and saying what he had done for this team, what he'd done for the league, and that was a man who really wanted to make a statement. I think what we heard in those comments was someone who I don't necessarily think. I think he's trying now to get the olive branch out to a certain extent because he knows he's probably not going to get Roger Goodell ousted. I think he's giving up on that, but I do think he's wanting some concessions. And part of that concession is the biggest belief he has is that Roger just has way too much power in terms of punishment. And that was all worked out in the CBA and all of those things. We've seen how that's played out. And we've seen how it played out with Zeke. And Jerry now believes that there have been enough embarrassments, whether it be the protests that have happened. I think Jerry obviously thinks that should have been handled differently, but that some of the power has to be taken off of Roger Goodell's plate. And he believes there should be more accountability. I think what he would give up in exchange for all this is if he could get back into that contract and add even more incentives, but incentives that are not as easy to get. I think what's troubling to him is those incentives are easily reachable to get Roger his $50 million and his jet and whatever else he wants. And so you heard Jerry there. To me, he even praised Roger. He said that Roger has made the NFL more transparent, maybe too transparent. We know.
Maybe that's because he's fighting with Jerry in a very public war that each is trying to influence the media and football fans to their advantage. It's not been good for the NFL. You know, it strikes me as blatant hypocrisy that when all of the anthem protests were going on and that was upstaging the games, that, you know, Roger Goodell and the league ownership, including Jerry Jones, were all arguing that this had to end. We need to focus back on the field. And then and once that kind of vanished as, you know, the main narrative in the NFL, to the point it's almost disappeared, now this takes its place. I mean, the thing between Jerry waging war with the other owners and the commissioner of the NFL replaced the anthem protests as the primary storyline in the NFL at a time when they were all saying they wanted the focus to be on the field. They denied the focus being on the field with their own behavior. Jerry's been through this before. Jerry sued the NFL before, very early on in his ownership of the Cowboys. And at that time, he achieved his objective, which was what you suggest is going to happen here, a compromise agreement. He wants Goodell to know that the owners, the 32 franchise owners, are his boss. He is not their boss. He does not dictate to them. They dictate his responsibilities to him. And I don't think Jerry's wrong in asking that all of the owners have knowledge of what's in the agreement that they're making with an employee of the NFL, an employee of theirs. The problem for Jerry is, just like changing the discipline thing with Zeke, he signed off on all this. He signed off on the personal conduct policy that led to Ezekiel Elliott being accused of domestic violence and suspended for 6 games. It's a baseline suspension under the policy that Jerry and the other owners unanimously approved. And the deal that's being made for the extension with Goodell was authorized by Jerry and all of the other owners unanimously. So, again, both situations, Jerry likes to make them beneficial to him, and they get his attention when it affects him directly. But he's not entirely wrong about his point of view. He just probably should have expressed it in May when all of these things were on the table for discussion.
And I think he understands, and he even brought up his motives, that this appears to his peers as owners as all driven by Zeke. And you have to know, even reading some of those stories that Van Natta and Wickersham from ESPN have written, there was obvious anger because Jerry feels like he was betrayed by his friend Roger Goodell.
Maybe you should feel like he was betrayed by the 4th pick in the draft.
I know, but he chooses not to. He never can. He never can make himself put it on the player. It's easier. It's like his children. It's easier to blame someone else, and in this case, it's too much power in the commissioner's office. And boy, if those other stories, that got lesser attention was the lack of trust, like in the commissioner's office, like the executives there and the commissioner, and does the commissioner trust these folks? I mean, with all the leaks and everything, what does this remind you of? I mean, as I was reading that, I was thinking about Trump's White House. I mean, just everything early on that you kept reading in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and people were leaking all sorts of stuff, and there was people concerned about the president and concerned about their own legacies. I think some of that's playing out in the commissioner's office right now.
I think one thing that's going to happen, because we saw late last week, Jerry made an attempt to schedule an additional owners meeting where he would address all of his colleagues in ownership about the issues that he has, and that Arthur Blank and his 6-member committee and Roger Goodell obviously want nothing to do with allowing Jerry access in a room where he can be very influential. He's a very powerful speaker. He could definitely persuade people who have neutral positions on the issue to come to his side. So I think, so the NFL's compromise on that was, well, we'll let you have a meeting with them when we have our regular meeting in Dallas on the 13th of December. Well, to me, Arthur Blank and Roger Goodell will never be more motivated to get this deal done before December 13th than they are right now, to make that meeting a moot point. So this deal to me is going to get done. I think Jerry is asking for something that is entirely fair and something that other owners and Goodell would be willing to give up, which is more oversight, more accountability from the commissioner's office to the owners. And it's humorous as hell to me that the owners and the players now want the same thing. None of them want Roger Goodell handling investigations and meting out discipline, right? Only Roger Goodell wants to do that. And the hypocrisy in that is, this is the reason they hired the guy to be the commissioner. He said, I am going to take back the game from the players and give it to ownership. And that's what he's done, and now they decide they don't want it.
Yeah, because it's too much. It's too much, especially when you see players getting suspended and it not having anything to do with being charged in the courts. I mean, that is what's got some of these owners just
in many cases, yeah, they haven't even been arrested. That doesn't mean that the player didn't do it.
No,
but I think you have to be able to provide some level of quality evidence before you're going to take a significant portion of a player's career away from him. And I think there was evidence against the high-profile players we're talking about being disciplined in both cases. And I'm talking about Tom Brady and Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, although Tom,
I don't know if they did what they were accused of.
Criminal. I mean, it was just
but he got suspended for.
It was an air pressure. It was an air pressure situation.
He got accused of cheating. Which, if you're Tom Brady, that's as serious an allegation as can be made against you in terms of on the playing field. The guy's won more Super Bowls than anybody in history, and now he's tainted by accusations of cheating. And those were, while there was a lot of circumstantial evidence, I don't know that it was ever proven beyond a doubt. More likely than not, I guess, was the phrase.
Yeah. But he's somehow survived this thing, by the way. I did notice last night we had something you should consider for Christmas. I was looking at the Sports Illustrated kind of a Christmas gift list that they had, some sportswear.
I prefer the book from Neiman Marcus. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah, I have. That's sort of out of control. But the TB12 sleepwear, you could sleep in some Under Armour type sleepwear, and it regenerates everything as you sleep. And it kind of brings you back after your. Ice
cream will do the trick.
That sounds horrible. I love avocado, but that sounds avocado ass.
That's his treat.
Okay.
That's the best thing he eats.
Ooh.
Avocado ice cream is how he treats himself.
Yeah.
When Tom Brady deserves a little something, that's what he has. Avocado ice cream.
Isn't that interesting? The man who has it all ends up wanting to deny himself a lot of things. All right. Now, there's some areas of his life he hasn't denied himself much at all, but I think it's a good place to end this.
There are a couple guys who have things that we covet denied us.
That we deny ourselves?
No, we don't have to deny ourselves. Somebody else does it for us. It's like unattainable, the things we want. It's just denied.
I've been denied.
Life denies us.
Oh, I've been denied several times. Okay, always come back. It is the Doomsday Podcast, live from Frito Nation Productions. Ed, I appreciate it. Say goodbye to everybody. I want to say this, Thursday, and we'll talk about this, our holiday plans. How do we react?
Wait till we find out what it is.
How do we react to a holiday ball game? Do we get together on Thanksgiving night?
It's going to be Black Friday. Just how Black a Friday is it going to be for the Cowboys?
That's exactly right. Chargers roll in here, coached by a former Cowboys assistant and a man who played running back for the Salina Bobcats. I think they're the Bobcats. That is the Doomsday Podcast. Good night, everybody.
Say good night, Ed. That was manly.
Well, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before. And the streets are all but empty, the bars have all shut down, and it's hard to find a friend inside this godforsaken town. You've had emptiness in this, from your head down to your toes.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it, between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
Norman, we need to pause this surgery.
What, doctor?
Because Xfinity Mobile just got even better. Now you're automatically connected to Wi-Fi speeds up to a gig while you're on the go. Plus, existing Xfinity customers can buy one unlimited line and get one free for a year.
Visit XfinityMobile.com to learn more. Offer ends 6/21. Restrictions apply. Existing Xfinity Internet service and 2 new unlimited lines required. Reduced speeds after 30 gigabytes of usage per line. Data thresholds may vary. Actual Wi-Fi speeds vary, not guaranteed.